we can do that.
So for those keeping track at home, this is now twice in the past hour that we've been interrupted by phone calls. In the meantime, I've had at least a dozen texts and Facebook messages come through on a variety of topics. This is the miracle of doing flow arts for a living. If you can be happy doing anything else, do it.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Is like if you can be happy doing anything else, like I probably should. I'm not going to say what I was going to say on air because I don't want it to be like I love this part of my life. I love like this conversation that we're having, how we can co-create a sustainable way for people to be able to live doing this, because we aren't happy doing other things. And some people might say like, oh, well, you're just addicted to like this feel good kind of thing. And it's like, well, maybe, but
well, and that's just it. Is
art. There's usefulness. There's usefulness in the community of what we do.
Yeah. So, okay. So I promise this is going to circle back around. Trust me on this. No. So there's a Canadian sci-fi author that I'm a big fan of. His name is Robert J. Sawyer. The way that most Americans would probably know him is that there was a TV series that debuted in the last season of Lost that was called Flash Forward, that is based upon a book that he wrote. And there's another book that he wrote that, well, it's a trilogy of books that's about an alternate Earth in which Neanderthals never became extinct. And it's basically him having an opportunity to write about what he would consider a utopian culture to be like, just in the guise of this society that's made up of Neanderthals instead of Cro-Magnon man. And one of the interesting parts of that book to me is that there's essentially a council that decides for a person what their career is going to be. And that sounds very scary and dystopian and everything, but one of the ways that they describe it in the book is that it's not just a matter of the things that you want to do, it's also a matter of what there is a demand for, in what way that you are of service to other people. And granted, I think having a council like deciding that for you is kind of a little much. I am a devout individualist, but I found this idea kind of intriguing, mainly because it put this kind of into words for me of like, there are quite a number, there's always this kind of phrase that goes through the ether of, follow your passion or follow your bliss, do what you're passionate about for a living, etc. And more I'm coming to the conclusion that is like some of the worst advice that you can give somebody, because them being passionate about it does not necessarily mean that A, they're any good at it, or B, that there's any kind of a demand for it, Even if you're going to do something that you're really, really passionate about, it fundamentally has to be something that is of service to other people. Because think about it, how else otherwise are you going to make a living on it? If there's not a demand for this thing that you're doing, then the idea of making a living at it is kind of, by its base, flawed, right?
Yeah.
And I know that this is rich coming from me, having, quit my day job almost 4 years ago now to pursue the flow arts full time. But at the same time, when I made that decision, there was certainly a part of it that was like, this is something that I'm passionate about and I want to continue to do. But also at the point where I quit my job, it was also very, very, very clear to me that I was doing something for which there was demand. There was an audience for the videos that I was creating. There were people who wanted to take classes from me. There were people that wanted to hire me out to perform for other people, There was fundamentally a way in which I was of service to other people. And what I'm really glad about is that I didn't try to leave my day job until it became clear that, there was that demand for what I was creating. For any average person, when they're just like, okay, I love doing yoga, I want to do it full time kind of thing. It's there are certain questions that are kind of buried in that. It's like, okay, so you're going to go and do your teacher training and everything. What is the current demand for yoga teachers where you're at? How many? What is the turnover rate for yoga teachers and the different dance studios and fitness places around where you happen to live? Are you going to try and create your own studio? I mean, do you fundamentally understand what it is to be responsible for a space like that, to make rent and everything? Are you going to share the space with other people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? There's so many things to consider there,
Oh, yeah. And that leads us back to the theme of the conversation is crowdfunding. Some people
Yes.
think that okay, I want to go pro. I'm gonna ask people for money to help me do that. But if they haven't thought about those things, they may or may not get the money, but they're probably
Absolutely.
not going to make it. And then, that's just a harsh reality, is that crowdfunding isn't the end all solution. You have
Yeah.
to still be a professional first.
Mm-hmm.
And being a professional comes with understanding the realities of the market
Yep.
and the realities of day-to-day business. And
Totally. One of my favorite crowdfunded efforts inside the Flow Arts actually in the past year was Teddy Petrosky's Momentum project.
yeah.
And number one, it was so impressive to me that because we're clearly living in an era when DVD and physical formats for media are on their way out. And so the fact that there was that much support in the community for a physical media product, number one, is just like incredible to me. I'm very impressed with our community for kind of rallying behind this effort and everything. But like very early on in the process of that, I remember it was actually almost exactly a year ago. Teddy came to visit me here in DC for my birthday, and we had a long conversation about Momentum because at the time it was still an effort that was in its infancy and everything. And he took some footage of both me and Tim Goddard that day that he intended to be part of the project, but he still was at a point where he was defining what it was to him.
Mm-hmm.
But the most valuable conversation that we had while he was here was about the budgeting for the project, because originally he was going to ask for like $2,000 for it and everything. And I kind of stopped him for a second, like, wait, Teddy, let's break out line by line what is every expense that you're going to need to get to this project. And after talking about it for probably a good 2 hours or so, we came up with a number that was closer to $5,000, which, if memory serves, is what he actually wound up asking for. And he kind of stops in his tracks for a second. He's like, oh, wow, it costs a lot more to make these things happen than I thought. I'm like, yeah, you really, really, really have to think your way through these things to establish, and I guess that'll be the takeaway that I want people who are thinking about crowdfunding as they might be watching this to take, is just, it's not enough to kind of reach into a hat and grab a number and say, this seems like an amount that's not too scary to people. If indeed, because the biggest problem that you can have is to crowdfund for an effort and then not deliver on it, because that undermines the credibility of other people's crowdfunding projects. And when that happens, it creates a problem for everybody. So if you have an effort that you are underestimating the budget for, stop. You're going to hurt other people's projects in the meantime. I would rather see people ask for a number that they think will not get supported, but actually have it be an accurate number. And in that way, have an accurate assessment of how much demand there is for this particular thing they're trying to create, than to, come at it from the perspective of, let me lowball this and, just get some buzz going,
Right. Completely agree. And another point for, like, I guess a selling point for having that kind of transparency is that it shows that you know what you're doing. When you have this transparent, accurate budget and you're like, this is exactly what it costs for, it further propagates, it educates the community. You're educating people what it takes to create these things, what it takes to make it. And so it's all the more reason to be realistic with your financials.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Well, this was a great conversation. It
Indeed.
took all sorts of windy turns and all the things.
A few attempts, yes.
Right. Well, I will get an article out soon, and probably a couple, like 3 weeks. I'm going to stop the broadcast now.
Okay.